We're joined now by political science professor Alan Sachs from the University of Texas in Arlington. Professor, how are you?
Fine, thank you. This is a morning that the news, you don't know which way to go with it. It is all over the place, but it looks like that the Hillary Clinton campaign does not like most of the news.
No, I would imagine not. In your many years of watching political activities, have you ever seen a political season like this?
Probably not, except I was around during the Watergate era and during the Vietnam era. I'm showing my age. And those were also very tumultuous times. During Watergate, some people might remember Richard Nixon left office voluntarily. He was probably going to be impeached, but he left office. But the interesting thing is, it was Republicans that forced him to leave. Some very prominent Republicans, like Senator Barry Goldwater, asked him to leave, and he left. What's going on today is a little bit different. The Democrats form a wagon around Hillary Clinton, and they're not going to let anybody, try to defeat her. The Republicans, as we've known this election season, devour their own. But the Democrats may, if more emails break, more big information, more WikiLeaks, who knows what's liable to happen, we may see the Democratic break in the dam. If that begins to happen, Hillary Clinton will be in more trouble than she already is. If she is elected president, and the chances are she still will be by a slim margin, she will carry this controversy with her into the White House. It is not going to end anytime soon. It could become a constitutional crisis. If the Republicans keep control of the House and the Senate, they will of the House. The Senate, a little bit more questionable. There could even be impeachment proceedings against her in the House. All that is very speculative, but it's that big of a controversy.
Professor Sachs, I want to get back to James Comey's decision to bring this forward now. The House Senate Minority Leader, Harry Reid, suggested that he had violated the Hatch Act by doing this. That was probably the most serious allegation I've heard against him.
It does not violate the Hatch Act at all. The Hatch Act prohibits certain federal employees from getting directly involved in a campaign. This may impact the campaign, but it's not a direct violation of the Hatch Act. He is just doing what he had to do. He had to reveal to the public, and to Congress in particular, what these emails are all about. He didn't give us the subject matter, but he did tell us that they're going to investigate these things more, that they discovered more emails. There's upwards totally 650,000 emails, and probably more to come. And he's just telling the Congress and the nation there's more out there. That's it. This in no way violates the Hatch Act. Senator Harry Reid, the minority leader in the Senate, a diehard Democrat who is retiring this year, has been known to make some very outlandish comments. For example, during the election of 2012, when President Obama was running against Mitt Romney, he said on the floor of the Senate, Mitt Romney had not paid his income taxes. Well, everybody knew that was not true, and so did Mr. Reid, Senator Reid. A reporter went back to him some weeks later and said, Senator Reid, Mitt Romney did pay his income taxes. Senator Reid replied, well, it worked, didn't it? And I think they're trying the same thing. They'll do anything they can and hoping something will stick.
So
the Hatch Act has not been violated by the FBI director.
I heard you say that you think she's still in line to win by a slim margin. If you look at the polls nationally, they've tightened up, but really the key is probably two battleground states, right?
Exactly. You're exactly correct. Nationwide, it is almost neck and neck, one would say. Some polls actually show Donald Trump ahead. Some, Mrs. Clinton. It's going to be very close. But I think the odds are still with Mrs. Clinton to go into the White House. Why? Yeah. Early voting. Over 23 million people have already early voted. A good reason why we should not have early voting, because they don't know what information is liable to come out before the election date. So early voting, I think, is a very bad idea, but it's too late to do anything about it right now. Some states will allow early voters to vote again, but it's very few states, and I think very few people would even know about it, or take advantage of it. So early voting, I think, is a bad idea. So I think Hillary Clinton does have a path into the White House. The Democrats and the Clinton organization have a very good, what is called, ground operation, to use a football metaphor. They grind it out. They can bring out the voters to the polls. They'll do it. So they're very ahead of Donald Trump in that kind of a method and organization. That's where money comes in. The Clinton organization had lots of money. Donald Trump, not so much compared to the Clintons. That's where money, organization, and expertise is going to work very much in Hillary Clinton's favor.
Historically, Professor, can you think of another example of where we've seen an October surprise of this magnitude 11 days out from an election?
Probably not. The only one that really comes to mind was the 1980 election between then-President Jimmy Carter, who, by all accounts, our morale was down, the economy was in bad shape, and America was being denigrated in international relations, especially by the Iranians. That was the Iranian hostage situation. For people who do not remember it, the American embassy was stormed, I think, in 1979 by Iranian Muslim militants who took over the American embassy, held our hostages there for weeks, if not months. In fact, it became a major media story. I think there was one with Ted Koppel. Some people might remember that newsman whose name was Ted Koppel. And every evening they would count the days that the American hostages were held in the American embassy. It was terrible. Here comes Ronald Reagan into office. And a lot of people accused him of the same thing they're accusing Donald Trump of. You're reckless. You're a cowboy. You don't know international relations. But the Iranians were a little bit leery of him. So on the very day, I believe, of the inauguration, they released the hostages.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan was elected because I think he promised that the captives would come home right on the day of the inauguration. If my memory is correct, the hostages were released, and Ronald Reagan becomes president of the United States.
Professor Alan Sachs from the University of Texas, I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. I think there's more to come. We live in interesting times.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.